Our next presentation is given by Warren East. He's Chief Executive Officer of ARM. Warren joined ARM Microprocessor IP in 1994, and after a series of roles became Chief Executive Officer in 2001. ARM is a constituent of the FTSE 100. Under Warren's leadership, ARM has matured into the world's leading semiconductor IP licensing company with more than 800 microprocessor licenses sold to well over 200 semiconductor companies worldwide. He is a companion of the Chartered Management Institute, a fellow of the Institute of Engineering and Technology, and a fellow of the Royal Academy of Engineering, and holds an honorary doctorate from Cranfield University. In 2007, Warren was named Business Leader of the Year at the National Business Awards and was named in the Barron's 2011 list of the world's best 30 CEOs. He is a non-executive director and chairman of the Audit Committee at De La Rue plc. He is married with 3 children and lives in Cambridgeshire. And Warren's going to discuss enabling technology transformation for the world. And I think, Warren, without stealing your thunder, you will even touch on energy and reducing energy consumption and so on. So over to you, Warren.
Thank you very much, Joe. Good afternoon, everybody. And thanks also to UKTI for the opportunity to stand here and wave the ARM flag for a few minutes. I'm going to start by sort of waving the ARM flag in a mobile context, where we're well known in the mobile space, and then go on, as Joe alluded, to talk about how we can use some of this mobile technology to address some of the wider challenges that are affecting us going forward. So if you look here on this slide, ARM's been around since 1990 as a separate company, and goodness how the world has changed since 1990. A few weeks ago, we had my middle daughter's 21st birthday party. And 21st birthday parties have changed a bit over the years, and now they expect one of the parents to stand up and say nice things about them because their friends will say nasty things about them. And I was wondering what to say, and my other daughter said, well, why don't you sort of do a bit of a history lesson like you did at my 21st party a couple of years ago. And so what was the history lesson? Well, actually, it was rather like the Olympics opening ceremony last year. It was in this sort of time period of 21 years, the internet has become part of our lives. In fact, it was 21 years ago, there or thereabouts, that Sir Tim Berners-Lee connected up the first server to the World Wide Web. And I said to my audience of 20, 21, 23-year-olds, and half of you lot would never be able to even find the party without use of the internet today, because they all use the sat-nav, which isn't on this picture up here. So I think we're all familiar with how the world has really changed from 1990 to 2011, 2012 now. And listening to Andy talk just then, about the different screens, these products displayed down the middle of the slide there, they are sort of seamlessly blurring into one. When I talk with investors, I sometimes talk about our activity in TVs and say, well, they're 56-inch smartphones, really. And that's very much what we just heard from Andy. And of course, there's a huge range because there are a lot of connected phones in the world, a lot of connected people. Mobile is very much where it's at today, outselling PCs. A couple of years ago, more people started connecting to the internet via mobile than via PCs and so on. It's very much a sort of always connected experience. And I only have to look around the room from this vantage point, and I can see the always connected experience going on in the room here. So I think we're all clear with how mobile is really a great driver for technology. And at ARM, it's actually quite a harsh environment for computing because you have to get a huge amount of compute power in a very small space. Over the last decade, smartphone processing power, and yes, at ARM we were worrying about smartphones a decade ago, you have about 100 times more processing power in a state-of-the-art smartphone today than you had a decade ago. Over that time, the battery size has remained about the same because this distance is about the same, and that's all that will fit in a phone. And battery technology has improved by roughly a factor of 2. So we've got a lot more efficient at creating microprocessors in that time. There is some scale to it. It is about more than just phones. Last year, about 30 billion chips were shipped that could have had a microprocessor in them. And of that, about a third, 8 billion, contained an ARM microprocessor. And obviously, a lot of those chips in mobile phones. A huge number in this box down the bottom there embedded in other chips, and we'll come on to that a bit later in this discussion. But that's where we are today. As I look forward over the next few years, then that 30 billion is going to grow to about 40 billion, and we'll see exactly how many of them are ARM flavored. I obviously hope that it's going to be rather more than 30%. Now, we don't do that all on our own. And it was interesting listening to the talks in here this morning, first thing this morning, and hearing about the partnership which has gone on between the different organizations to bring technology to this Olympic Games. No one company could do it all alone. And so it is in our business, where we start off with some very energy efficient technology at the bottom and create the lowest power microprocessors there are. But we license that technology to about 300 semiconductor companies, and they work with about 1,000, and we work with about 1,000 what we call ecosystem partners, all optimizing their technology in some way to work with ARM's microprocessor architecture. And it's necessary to have that partnership to realize this digital world. And then you get a huge range of products at the top there, and you actually get real innovation, because 2 heads are better than 1, and surprisingly, 1,000 companies are better than 1 as well in terms of producing innovation. And the challenge is to get those businesses collaborating and working together. So I think that there's a kind of symbiotic relationship that exists here between the semiconductor industry and the mobile industry. The mobile world has put huge technical demands on the semiconductor industry. The semiconductor industry has responded and satisfied those needs. The mobile industry has grown, and as a consequence, the semiconductor industry has grown in parallel. And it's all those innovations within the semiconductor industry which have actually enabled the mobile industry to grow. And without innovation within the semiconductors, within the chips that sit within the phones, I wouldn't be standing here today talking about a 100-fold increase in compute power over the last decade in mobile. And in fact, mobile continues to drive the semiconductor industry, and now, as you see on the bottom bullet of this slide, now it's reached the stage where most of the growth in semiconductors is actually driven out of mobile. So much so that if you look at a concept phone, and this isn't a real phone, although I'm sure there's one in Samsung's labs somewhere that really does look like this, and certainly the ARM telecom marketing people have been telling me this for many years, that within a phone there are about a dozen different microprocessors. They all do something slightly different. And when you read the technology press, you hear a lot about the applications processor. And this applications processor, you see, has several microprocessors within it, and that's the essential brain of the phone. But goodness me, to enable that phone to communicate with the cellular network, and handle the vast quantities of data that it handles today and squirt it down a pipe that isn't that much bigger than the pipe of 10 years ago, that needs a much more complex cellular modem than 10 years ago. And so you need a much more powerful microprocessor to run that cellular modem, and so on, and so on. So that's a little bit about the mobile world. And of course, people like me get very enthusiastic when we talk about these things, and I must say I still enjoy going to Dixon's at the airport and looking at all the gadgets and fancy phones and tablets and so on. But perhaps perhaps even more satisfying for me as an engineer is to see this technology getting used to really make lives better. So, people remember things like mining disasters where people get killed or almost get killed, and now we find things like helmets with embedded tracking devices, so that when these guys are stuck underneath a mountain somewhere, other people can actually pinpoint exactly where they are, and that makes it much easier to get them out. We're going to talk about energy in a few minutes as well, and it's good to see things like the mobile technology being used in things like intelligent street lighting, so that you actually have street lights with a brain that can work out when they need to be on because there's somebody underneath them and somebody needs some more illumination, or when there isn't anything underneath them and they're just creating light pollution and burning energy. So that sort of innovation, enabled by mobile technology, is really a good thing. And as I look over the next several years, and when I presented this slide at the innovation version of this conference on Monday, I'd actually changed it to next decade of transformation, not next 5 years, because I think this is a continuous process. Then you see, whether we're talking about mobile connectivity, whether we're talking about the servers that all the mobile devices are connected to, whether we're talking about the broadband infrastructure that connects them, or whether we're talking about machines rather than people being connected, it doesn't matter. There's a huge transformation that's taking place as we speak, and we see architecture at the heart of that, enabling that to become a reality. A couple of the things that really underline that transformation: you absolutely need continuous innovation. So it is the partnership type model that enables that innovation to happen. And if we're going to do all that communication with vast quantities of data, then we need to make it energy efficient. So efficiency really underlines it. So if I look forward over the next few years in each of those areas, in mobile, what did we hear this morning about the user interface on some of these applications? It's all about user experience. It's all about simplicity and clarity and being easy to use. So great user experience, absolutely essential. And there's no point in having too big a computer for the user experience that you're trying to create. There's no point in having too small a computer either. So we need the right size computing. One thing's for sure: the visual experience on all these things is getting much richer. And I must say, I have used these Olympic Games to go out and buy one of Andy's new televisions, and I have to say the experience is really quite fantastic, and that's because the screens that you get are just much higher definition, and it creates a much more pleasant user experience. It was interesting this morning, we didn't really hear much about security, but as we blast more and more data around this internet, whether it's fixed or whether it's mobile, security is clearly an issue, and maybe that's a topic of another conversation. But as we look forward in mobile in particular, the new modem standards, LTE standards and so on, certainly another thing to look out for. Notice the bullet on the bottom of the slide there about all of these mobile devices driving demand for more servers back in the cloud or wherever. Similar sort of trends in the Internet of Things, and I won't go through all the bullets on this slide, but it was very encouraging to hear the second talk this morning from Professor Yang about the sensors, and we do think that the Internet of Things, a good chunk of the Internet of Things is an Internet of intelligent sensors, and this type of very low power mobile technology is important in enabling that. And if we get that right, then there will be huge volumes of these things over the next decade or so, and they will genuinely be making life better. Of course, as I say, none of that is going to work unless you can actually connect the devices, the mobile devices, or the Internet of Things devices to the servers at the other end. And we've had this morning all sorts of statistics about the sort of increases in data carried. I don't actually know what the right answer is, because there's been so many of them, but undoubtedly there's evolution in the infrastructure that connects these things together. So a little bit more on that in a moment or two. As I say, it'd be great if we can use some of that technology to address some larger problems. And it's a bit of a cliche that a problem is an opportunity in disguise, but cliches are cliches for a reason, because they're generally true. And I think there is a huge opportunity here for technology and for investors in technology companies in addressing issues such as worldwide consumption of energy. It is amazing that nearly half the world's electricity is used by electric motors. And we're here at the ICT day. Good news, today, only 10% of the world's electricity is effectively used by ICT. That's the good news of today. Of course, as we go forward, we're actually going to see more electric motors and we're going to see a lot more ICT. And, here's a statistic on this slide, and as I say, forward-looking statistics are subject to huge amounts of error, so who knows, but the right answer is that we're going to need to use a lot more electricity. Perhaps 70% as much energy over the next 25 years. Let's see, because it could be an awful lot worse than that. For instance, in the data world, as I say, we heard lots of statistics today. The interesting one common thing about those statistics is that over the last several years, since 2007, which I think one of these pieces of data comes from 2007, we've consistently underestimated the growth. So whatever is the right answer, we're probably still undercalling it. Anyway, the number that I use for the next decade in terms of increase in amount of data transmission is about 20x. And by the way, back to the mobile world, the amount of improvement in battery efficiency over that time is about 2x. So that's a 15 times improvement in efficiency required. But anyway, whether you measure it by sort of amounts of electricity or amounts of CO2, there's a big issue from data. And remember, ICT only accounts today, good news, for 10% of the world's electricity. So if we do 20 times as much data processing, unless we change the way we do it, then we're going to have to build quite a few power stations, because ICT is going to be more than twice the size of the world's electricity consumption today. So that's a bit of a problem. However, here's an example of how mobile technology applied to these sorts of problems can help. In the server domain, a few years ago, we decided this must be an opportunity. It's a problem, but it's also an opportunity. An experiment so far suggests that as far as servers are concerned, we can save about 3/4 of the amount of energy used by applying low-power, efficient technology developed in the mobile space. Switching to electric motors. A lot of those electric motors that use half the world's electricity actually show up in industry. Well, we want industry, so there's no point in turning industry off to save the power. We actually need industry to create products that we want to use, but unfortunately they use a lot of electric motors in industry. About 2/3 of the world's electric motors are used there, which means a huge amount of global energy consumption today. And if we look forward over the next several decades, then that's likely to double. Well, the good news is that you can apply mobile technology in this space as well and save variously between about 30% and 60% of the amount of electricity that the electric motors are using by making them smarter. And historically, the extra cost of adding that technology is unattractive. And actually, there's still a business model issue, because the guy who's selling the motor isn't the one who's actually going to benefit. It's the guy who's using the motor who's going to benefit from the reduction in cost of energy used. But eventually, that will become a tool for the guy who's selling the motor to sell the motor. And hopefully, we can apply this technology in that space as well. One use for growth of electric motors over those coming years is electric vehicles. Today, electric vehicles starting to make an impact. Not that they're going to save huge quantities of energy, but the energy that they are using is likely to be cleaner energy because we can generate it in a cleaner fashion. And so that's a great opportunity for this type of technology, because not only can you make the motors more efficient, you can make them cleaner. And I think we've already heard from Andy about the sort of whole connected house. But when we look beyond just the consumer products in the connected house and look at energy use of some of these products, then certainly applying this low-power, highly efficient mobile technology to the connected home, again, presents us with lots of opportunities, business opportunities, also opportunities to save a lot of power. And some of that is not just in absolute terms, but how we manage the demand across the power network as a whole. And we've got all the different users of electricity and different means of generation combined with the transmission, but then intelligent use makes it all much more efficient. So the connected life, I think, we've had enough of that this morning. It's clear from this little example of the first smartphone-powered Olympics that the connected life is here and here to stay. And the proposition that I'm making is not only will that continue, but we can reuse that technology and create a much more sustainable world going forward. As I look at it from a business point of view, then no one company can do it all. But the good news is that if we do get together and collaborate, then there's opportunity across this whole space for many of the technology companies in this room. That's all I need to say. Thank you.